All right, guys. How are you all doing this Saturday afternoon? My name is Michael, and I am the Director of Marketing and the Community Manager for Big Picture Games. I am joined here today with Brad, our Director of Development from Eastern North Carolina, as well as TJ from Oregon, who is our lead developer on game development. So what we're going to be doing today is answering some questions from our community that were posed not only on the forums, but as well as questions that are going to be posed here in this chat as well. We do ask that everybody follow our terms of use and avoid any sort of derogatory language or anything in the chat channel. Otherwise, you may lose the ability to post questions. Now, Brad is going to be, as you can see here in his desktop, giving you guys a little bit of an example of how the world builder works, as well as what he's been doing with some of the wilderness portal placement. But we wanted to jump right into these questions here so we can try to get through as many as we possibly can. The first one we're going to take from the forums, and it's from Grumbags. Grumbags asks, what would you guys say to someone who is interested in the ideas of the game, but hesitant to buy it due to rumors of the game being grind, grief, gankfest, dead, poorly managed, only enjoyable for PvPers, dated graphics, and don't understand why there's so many Darkfalls, or any of the other critiques that are brought up around Darkfall? Well, I think the the biggest response to that would be the fact that we came from Darkfall Online, the majority of our team, and as prior players ourselves, our goal is to try to make Darkfall Rise of Agon as great of a game as possible, which means that we have to be able to address a lot of the core issues and concerns that our player base brings to us, a lot of things that we ourselves experienced in the prior game. And our focus really is to expand on where the game currently is and what we've done through early access and alpha development to become a full-fledged sandbox MMORPG that's developed by a team of very passionate game developers, as well as people from the marketing team, which is what I'm a part of, our quality assurance team, and the whole 9 yards. I don't know if you have any other comments that you want to say there, Brad.
Help me!
Oh, no, you said it pretty good.
Thank you, Daenerys, for following. I'm going to go to the next question on the forums. It's from Rigon. Rigon asks, will there ever be a recruit-a-friend policy event? So we are actually testing right now internally a referral system that we are planning to implement at launch. And the referral system is going to provide players the ability to have links that will direct them to our website to create trial accounts that they can then try the game. And anybody that becomes a active subscriber or buys any sort of Nithron coin package with those or through those referral links will get a percentage of that turned into Nithron coins that they can then use on either in-game subscription tokens, cosmetics that we plan to add down the line, as well as any other things like in-game services such as sex or race changes that we're planning to implement. So to answer that question, yes, there will be a referral system, and it's planned to be implemented in the next couple of weeks once we finalize testing. The next question here in the forums is, what is there to do for people that aren't as interested in picking PvP fights, roaming, death matching, etc.? Well, as it stands right now, the game has a pretty in-depth crafting system where you're able to craft essentially anything that players can either wield themselves or carry, or items that you can find out on the game. But ultimately, we want to be able to expand in regards to the crafting system a lot further beyond that. But crafting is only one aspect of the game that is outside of just picking fights or death matching, as people say. We have on our team a few guys that are doing lore as well that we're planning to get implemented into the game, so that players will have things such as a part of their new journal that we'll be creating that will allow them to kill unique monsters and get the background of their lore, so they can have a record of that for all time, as well as any other type of things that we can add to many of the unique places in the game. I mean, essentially, a lot of the people on our very team are some of the individuals that really like PvE. They like going out and fighting monsters, going into dungeons. They like crafting. We have some guys that like role-playing. Our team is actually, I'd say, comprised mostly of individuals who aren't necessarily diehard PvPers day in and day out, and are more from players that are, like the ability to be able to do multiple different kinds of things in games outside of just fights. I don't know if TJ or Brad, if you guys want to say anything else to that as well, or expand on some of the ideas that you may have to expand on that question.
What was the question? Sorry.
Help me!
It was in regards to what is there for people to do that aren't interested in just PvP and roaming, deathmatching, etc. Like some of the things that we've not only implemented ourselves already, but are planning to do as well in development.
I mean, there's a lot of things to do, obviously, other than just PvP. The game is just, I don't know who's asking the question, if they've played Darkfall or not, but you can do whatever you want, really. You don't have to PvP if you don't like PvP, but there's still that risk factor that adds an extra incentive when you're playing, as far as just being, giving you that adrenaline rush of just doing something that's dangerous and whatnot. You don't necessarily have to be a PvP player to enjoy that aspect.
So Dark Ghost asks, is there a chance of an in-game lottery system? Players could purchase tickets and a draw would take place daily. I think it would be really fun. Do either of you guys want to hop in there and make comments on that?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to do too many things at once here.
Yeah, me too. I was actually talking to somebody else typing when you read that question, so my bad.
An in-game lottery system, essentially something where players could purchase raffle tickets or something, and there'd be a lottery in the game itself that we would do.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to do stuff like that. Any sort of like mini games, or I mean, it's just a matter of getting the time to do it and getting to that point where we can do stuff like that, which is obviously going to be post-launch. But any sort of game like that, we all want to see like poker in the taverns and stuff like that. That's obviously something we all want to see for sure.
Yeah, I think just to emphasize, these are discussions that we've had multiple times and very lengthy discussions on this stuff. Any type of mini game, poker, cards, even chess, whatever we can manage to get into the game somehow, we will at some point. But like Brad said, it's just a matter of time. We'll obviously start with something simple. The gambling thing, the raffle tickets is pretty simple to implement, so we could probably get something like that in relatively quickly post-launch. But as far as the mini games and things like that, those will take a little bit longer, but we want to, and I mean, we plan to. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I think I want to emphasize again here, guys, that we have a team of 32 guys right now that are working on the project, and I'd say the majority of them have been talking about things like tabletop games and little mini games, even mini games when you're doing harvesting tasks like fishing, or going out and gathering wood and iron and things along that nature. Those are all the kinds of things that we want to eventually be able to implement. It's just a matter of prioritizing and getting the time to do specific things. Right now, our goal is obviously to focus on launch for May 5th. And once we get past that point and the server's live and there's no wipe looming over people's heads, that's when we can really start to expand on a lot of these cool and unique type of features to implement during our patch cycles, which as we stand right now, we're planning to do on a monthly basis. So roughly every month having a solid patch cycle that we'd be able to implement to keep things fresh and be able to consistently add in new content and tweak previous content that we may have implemented.
Help me!
Nightmare UDL asks, are you going to do a profit sharing with Twitch streamers to get people to sub, like say $3 per person to Twitch streamer that they bring in? That kind of goes back to our referral system. We're going to actually have a streamer program for our community so that the people that go out of their way to help stream the game and get exposure for Darkfall Rise of Agon will be rewarded for doing so. But on top of that, people who are streaming will be able to link their referral link so that, again, anybody who ends up signing up, whether it's buying a Nithron coin package or it's paying for a subscription package, the 30-day, 90-day, 180-day subscription package we're going to have at launch. People will get 10% of that turned into Nithron coins to be used for whatever they want in the store itself. Nat asks, would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck? I'll let you two answer that question.
I don't know.
What was the question?
Everyone has the fattest loot.
100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck?
I don't know how to answer that.
I'd say 100 duck-sized horses because you'd probably kick them all. I think a horse-sized duck would be pretty terrifying there, Nat.
Brownies are bad enough, though.
All right, here's a more serious question from Nat. What design challenges do you face with having players from various parts around the world and not just the US? Well, our team is comprised of people from 9 different countries. So obviously there is challenges when it comes to people's schedules and the time zone that they're in. A lot of times when we have meetings, the people in Europe, for example, it'll be very late for them, or sometimes it'll be very early for us in the US or in North America. But to be quite honest, with the collaborative tools that we've been using for quite some time after we did a restructuring back towards the beginning of last year, we've really been able to become much more proficient in not only making sure that people are able to collaborate on any project that we're working on or any task, whether it's a document on our Google Drive that people are making edits to or additions to, or it's an actual development task that people are doing in Jira when we have tasks that we're implementing. So even though we are from different countries and different time zones, everybody knows their responsibilities and the role that they have to play. And we know that we have to get things done, so people do it. So I think it really helps in the modern digital age to be able to have such great collaborative tools as we do, and it makes it much easier to be able to work with people from across the, all over the world, essentially. Mementis the One asks, are you going to focus more on PvE, group PvE, or PvP? Well, let's first break that up into group PvE and things along the nature like going into dungeons with more players. Our champion spawn mechanics is basically the first change that we're doing when it comes to PvE mechanics to focus more on larger scale fights. And at launch, there's going to be 11 of these spawns, 1 on each subcontinent, and a total of 7 in the mainland. And essentially, these different spawns where there's going to be multiple waves of various enemies, as well as a unique named mob that you'll have to fight at the end that's a boss. It's going to be designed to cater towards larger groups, anywhere from 5 to 10 people upwards to 20, 30, maybe even 40 people if we look at the center champion spawn that we'll be working on. And that's really just the start to trying to focus more on group PvE. It's not good for the health of the game that there's so many mob spawns that players can do completely solo or even with just 2 people. And you need to be able to provide experiences for players that want to fight in larger groups, that want to go out farming with more players or with more friends. And it has to not only be a challenging experience, but also a rewarding experience when it comes to what you get from killing those particular monsters and engaging in those various experiences. I don't know if TJ, you want to make any comments about the champion spawns and some of the things that you've been working on. But I know that this is definitely a very hot topic point for all of us on the team, as it's one of our focus.
Well, kind of, if we're going to focus more on PvE, group PvE, or PvP as a general question, I think we just kind of, the PvP is already there, in my opinion. I know there's some changes to be made, and changes will be made for that. But I think if we focus, from where I stand, if we focus on PvE and get people out in the world doing things and having fun, the PvP will happen. You don't have to do anything to influence PvP. You have to encourage and influence PvE and get players out there, and that's how I feel about it. So yeah, the champion spawns are just a start. It was we got some spawn scaling in. It's kind of a test run. We'll see how that goes, and we'll expand it and tweak it as we go along. I have tons of ideas. We all do. Anything from missions to dynamically spawn mob spawns, all kinds of things that have been kind of working out in the back of my mind that I think that you guys would enjoy, and it'll be pretty cool when we get there. I don't want to go into too much detail just in case it doesn't happen or give away too many secrets, but yeah, I mean, absolutely, we're going to focus on that stuff, and that's our goal.
All right, so the next question is, which new features are you most excited about, and how do they address the concerns of people who have tried Darkfall and quit?
Say that again. You cut out on me.
Which new features are you most excited about, and how do they address the concerns of people who have tried Darkfall and quit? I mean, in my mind, the first things to talk about are, what we just mentioned, the enhancements to PvE. I think there's so many different types of monster spawns out there and various experiences for the player bases themselves. It's a matter of making sure that all the different monster spawns are not only worthwhile to go out and farm, but that there's varying experiences for players in both challenge and difficulty. So, outside of things like that are the control tower system that we're working on, which is going to be deployable, the deployable vendor system. I think the fact that there's going to be a lot more focus on things that you can deploy out in the world and have an effect on how you can shape the world, so to speak. I think that's something that I've always wanted since the inception of Darkfall and when the first one came out. And I think the key here is just consistently expanding on the kind of sandbox mechanics and features that we can implement. We mentioned before tabletop games in places like taverns and NPC cities or player cities. Something as simple as that can lead to hours upon hours of entertainment for people and repeat entertainment, things to do that I've done in many other games. I mean, something as simple as the card games that you see in games like the Witcher and Witcher 3. I've put many hours into things like that, even when I was younger in some of the old school RPGs out there. And if we can provide those kind of mechanics and tools to the community and to the player base, then it gives things for people of all walks of life to be able to do.
I'm really excited about deployables. I think that is going to lead to some really cool stuff. Starting with the control towers, cities. The idea behind that is clans will claim a city, and then they can take this control tower and place it next to their tile and expand their territory. The more towers they put up, and the next tile's over, the greater they expand this territory. And there's a lot of things we could do with that. Some ideas that came through is to have localized banking, kind of like a house bank that you can go out and place on these tiles that you control, like next to your control tower. Maybe build some walls around it. These are just ideas, things that we have potential to do. So it's exciting to me when I think about that stuff. And yeah, so if I had to pick one thing that was most excited for, it'd be deployables in general, because there's just so much you can do with it.
Yeah, and Brad recently implemented changes to the dynamic spawning mechanics of items that dynamically spawn in the game, and even something as simple as that, or as simple sounding as that, allows us to be able to implement many different things, such as new items that only spawn in certain locations out in the world, so that you have to go out to those various locations to get them. Even things like a certain number of rare chests that spawn out in the world that players have access to that can drop very rare or unique items. I mean, the options are very endless in the kind of things that we can to implement when it comes to not only deployables, but things that dynamically spawn, especially in regards to the advances that have happened with a lot of modern day server infrastructure compared to what was out back in 2009.
Yeah, another thing about the dynamic spawns that I really like is the idea that we can eventually get some stuff into the ocean, on the ocean floor, and have real exploration, underwater stuff happening, and that'll be really cool. So hopefully we can get to that point. Nudge, nudge, Brad.
Yeah, I don't think that's far off, honestly.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, you got the locations down, the elevation down, and it's just a matter of changing their dynamic to spawn on underneath the water, which is super simple, I'm sure. It's just like Tombstones used to be.
I actually think they originally intentionally changed it to have things spawn on top. I think naturally things spawn
Exactly.
on the bottom.
So we could just change it for the individual items so that he go to the bottom and everything else stays on top like it's supposed to, or like we want it to. And
right.
that'd be golden. You know, like I mentioned the oysters or clams or whatever they are. Have them things spawn under the water and put a really good use and value in the pearls, and then people will be pearl diving. You know, it's just shit like that.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, it looks like I'm using some textures here on my local.
You were having some issues with the stream when you were loading up Darkfall, just so you know.
I did? Oh, shit.
Yeah. John Tricone asks, would you consider taking the Glaive, which is an R40 polearm, and switching its rank with either the Imperial Halberd or the Talus, which is an R50 or an R70? We haven't talked about it. I don't know if we are going to be making some more changes when it comes to crafting professions, so maybe we'll look into that. But keep in mind that our artists that we have, especially Sean, who's been doing a lot of the new art assets you've been seeing, will have the ability to make some new weapons and things along that nature too, to fill some of those areas or expand upon some of those different ranks. Bardicus asked, do you plan on adding in the missing armor pieces to all the armor sets? Do you want to take that one, Brad?
Missing pieces to armor sets? Is that what you said?
Yes. I guess in regards to the armor smithing overhaul that we'll do post-launch.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get there to the armor sets. The thing about the armors is that they're fit to every single character, gender, and race. So it's basically 12 times the work to put new armor in and stuff like that. So it's definitely on our agenda, but it's not super high to the point where we would spend time doing it right now. But, I mean, obviously, finishing what AV started would be the goal, and then obviously expanding from there.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be doing an overhaul to both armor smithing and tailoring after launch in one of the earlier patches, and it'll also have a lot of focus on combat itself, including the specializations that are currently in game. So we ultimately want to not only expand on the current armor sets that are missing armor pieces, but also implement new armors too. But as Brad said, it requires a lot of work due to how many different races and both sexes that there are per race that you have to account for when you make these different types of armor pieces. Will we be able to bind multiple skills to one key on launch or soon after? Currently, I have to use a macro to have skills and mount leans on Q and E. The same goes for parry and raise on right click. You guys want to make any comments on that?
Why? What do you mean? I guess I don't understand. We can already bind everything to one key, right?
I think they're in regards to multiple skills. So if you're on your mount and you push Q and E for lean, and it's separate.
So mount stuff and separating it. Yeah, we'll do that. I think a couple of people took a look at it. I know Neil did at one point, and he said nope. Decided to move on to something else. It wasn't just like he couldn't do it. It's just there's every time we look at something, we try to determine how much time it's going to take versus the value we get out of it. And it's not that that's not valuable, but it's just a decision we have to make at the time we look at a piece of the task. So, yeah, we'll get there. I don't know when.
Okay. I know that's been talked about or asked for a while, and it's definitely on our list because it is actually a task at the moment. But as TJ said before, just really a matter of time. and prioritizing the things that we have to do first and foremost. What has been done in terms of player retention? What's going to stop bank staring, city camping, friendly duels only from happening after a few months? All right, so I think maybe now's a good time to make mention of some of the economy changes that we have gone through. Let's see here. So as we've mentioned in a couple of our previous updates, we are doing a complete overhaul of the in-game economy. And one of the reasons why that is being done is to help drive a better risk versus reward balance when the game launches. And one of the reasons why people bank stare or sit in their city and duel all day is because when gear doesn't mean anything or have any sort of value, and it's rather, easy to go out and get without anything that's sought after, there's no real reason to drive conflict or things to fight over it. And some of the changes that we've done, as just some examples, is, as we mentioned on Friday or yesterday, we've redone all the gold output for all the mobs based off of not only their difficulty, but in various cases, their HP. We've made some changes to what enchanting materials drop where and the drop rates of the enchanting materials themselves. Mob drop gear has been nerfed greatly in regards to higher ranks being dropped, which will drive more value to crafted material. There'll be less rare ores dropping from certain resources, or certain faucets, I should say, that they currently drop from. Things like boss mobs will have less gold now than they currently do, but have more valuable materials used for higher end crafting, since that's where we're going to be driving the real reward now is over those materials. And just in general, a lot of things change when it comes to the faucets, from things like chaos chests and even chests out in the world that you can use keys on, and things like sea towers and events that people currently go to. So to answer that question in regards to the economy itself, players are more willing to stay around and stay engaged if there's actually reasons for fights outside of just fights. And one of the problems that has always plagued Darkfall is when you're simply having fights just to have a fight between a group of people without any sort of ulterior meaning to it, it can become stale rather quickly. By having a proper balance in the economy and a proper balance of risk versus reward, it helps keep players more engaged and wanting to stick around. Slaven asks, what type of special loot will the new champ spawns have to keep them populated versus other regular spawns? And does BPG feel this will keep them populated for a long time once banks are full? Do you want to expand on that, TJ?
Yeah. So right now we're looking at some various things. We don't have anything finalized for the super special loot, but we've had a lot of good ideas come through. One of them was like the ultimate weapon type thing. I don't know what you would call it, but basically you get like an R80 or a beefed up R80 that has a lifespan, say 72 hours or something, but it doesn't not have Dura. And so you're inclined to use it because if you don't, it just disappears anyway. So there's that idea. So I got somebody coming in here. So, and then another idea. Some of the ideas that we think are more beneficial would be like rare crafting recipes, something that you can get, you can collect, and then you can craft something that no one else can, and it's permanent because it's a skill, right? There's a lot of different things that we're still discussing, and of course, I don't think it's anything we're going to stop putting on them either. I mean, there's no reason to not continue changing it up, and so no matter what, even if you've killed the same champion 100 times over the course of the next couple of years, it'll provide new loot, and they'll actually get new skills as we'll change up their abilities and their animations and stuff over time, and so it'll be a new experience pretty regularly.
And one of the things in regards to adding new items or new things that we can have for loot is the art asset itself. And at launch, when we plan to expand on the art team, we'll have more ability to add new items and even potentially new models for things like armor and weapons and shields and things along those natures. Once we get those kind of resources where we can start creating a lot more new types of assets outside of the things that we've already been creating internally, it'll open up the doors to be able to consistently add in and change the type of unique and rare loot that you get from things like champion spawns or unique rare mobs, as TJ was referencing. So Green Chili asks, what is the planned vision for the economy beyond the new set it and forget it player vendors? Does BPG's vision for the economy have a space for active buying, selling, bartering, and or events like the old Marshall trade fairs, player-driven trade routes?
I mean, it's a sandbox. If you want to have a trade fair, you can have a trade fair. There's nothing stopping you. But as far as the vendors being set and forget, I don't think that's the case. There's upkeep, or you're not going to be able to just plop it down and forget about it. You're going to have to keep stocking it and advertise it and all kinds of stuff. So I don't know. I don't really know. Other than that, I don't know how to answer that question.
I think one thing to keep in mind is that when there's a healthy economy in the game and there's a lot of variety and resources that are available or needed for things like rare crafting recipes or mastery gear, it's going to drive and incentivize more people to trade. And one of the things we have to do is provide players the tools that they need to be able to actually engage in that trade. And player vendors is just really one of the first bigger mechanics that we plan to implement that will help incentivize people trading wares that they get. And, as we add in new items and new demand for things that can be found in the world, there'll be more, reason to trade with people as well. And on our end, we just have to ensure that we provide you guys with the tools necessary to be able to engage in that trade and find the items that you're looking for, or to be able to sell the wares that you have, for a profit to other individuals.
Yeah, I don't think the vendors will replace trade fairs. They'll probably just complement them because there's still a lot of advantage to having a trade fair. It just gets a lot of quick transactions between a lot of different people, all in one place. And it's an event, people like having events, so I don't think it will replace it. But, during, some random time, maybe it's not prime time or whatever, then they'll still be vendors around, which is a good thing. And they'll be all over the place, so it won't necessarily just be in, certain spots. They'll be wherever you want to put them within reason.
So Salival asks, has there been anything done to holding ownership to prevent clans from acquiring the map, thus making any new clans players to the game miss out on the opportunity of getting a holding, building it up, etc.? I think that question can be answered a couple, with a couple different answers. First and foremost, with the economy revamp itself, players are going to have to go out and figure out what monsters drop what and at what rates. So going out and acquiring a city or the resources needed to build it up isn't going to be, necessarily as cut as dry as it is now, due to the fact that veterans nowadays know what the general loot tables are around the world. But on top of that, with our Wilderness Portal Network that you see Brad working on in the background, we're going to be removing portals from player cities, and that means that having a bunch of satellite cities around the map just because you're able to siege it and hold it for that point in time is not going to be as incentivized as it currently is now, because if you're not able to easily port there like you currently can in the present day game, you may not be as inclined to take multiple holdings all around the world that you won't be able to defend. And on top of that, we do plan to implement a stronger alliance system and revamp that whole system when we focus on the siege system itself as well. And that will allow us to make clear lines in the sand as to who is allied to who, and provide things like upkeep on cities and ways to ensure that if you're going to expand and have a big empire, that you have the resources and the personnel needed to be able to maintain that. And I hope that answers your question.
One thing that Brad and I discussed recently was because there's been a lot of talk about taxes and things like that for cities, and one thing that we discussed briefly was adding upkeeps to the cities. Maybe you could have a upkeep for individual components. So you have your basic upkeep would be like your bindstone and your crafting stations, and then you have another upkeep for your nodes, and then you have another upkeep for vendors, right? So then if you're not paying, if the clan isn't paying your taxes, you lose these abilities within the city. And then so that's a possibility. And then there's of course the control tower territory control system that we're putting in. That makes it to where clans don't want to own other cities because it's not beneficial. It would be beneficial if you owned like neighboring cities, because then you could tie them and link them together. See, one of the benefits of having the control towers in place, at least it's in the discussion right now, is that when you expand these control towers, place these control towers and expand your land, you're actually also going to get your city bonuses out there. At least that's one of the things that we've been discussing. So that's a possibility. And so that gives you the incentive to stay local and not have cities all over the map, because then you're increasing your survivability in that area or whatever. So anyway, yeah.
And I was looking at chat a little bit as well in regards to some of the questions on the trading events. Keep in mind with the changes to the alignment system, since we went to a single alignment in one of our patches a few months ago, you can actually have a city that you own, that you set the city itself as well as the surrounding tile to lawful, and that would provide you a more safer environment to have a place that would be a trading hub or to host trading events. Because anybody that goes in there that interferes with those events would, lose out on alignment and be penalized for that. So the goal on our end is to provide you guys with as many tools as possible to, shape the world as you see fit and give you more tools to do as you want, whether it be having a territory that's safer for more casual players that you have as a trade hub, or having an empire that you have out somewhere that is a free-for-all PvP zone that, you guys end up killing anyone that gets into your territory. It's really all about giving you guys those mechanics itself to be able to do what you want. Vita asks, are you guys sending emails to players that have registered? We are. We have a final newsletter going out in a couple of days. Once our new website, or our updated website, I should say, goes live with our launch packages, we will be sending out that final newsletter that we have. And we've gotten quite a lot of people registered to that newsletter since we started alpha about a year and a half ago. So it's been exciting to see the community grow in regards to the people that are not only coming to the forums, but viewing our website and signing up for our newsletter. So that, like I said, will be going out in the next couple of days, and it will be our final newsletter before launch, and then we'll be consistently doing a monthly newsletter coinciding with our patch cycle after we go live. So Bear Grimm asks TJ, how long until the X is on the right?
Forever and ever.
No, I think the goal is after launch in one of our subsequent patch cycles to be able to have a fully customizable user interface. Isn't that your current plans, TJ?
Yeah, I've actually been posting some screenshots of some stuff. If you guys have been paying attention, you probably noticed some things. So you just need to start paying more attention. That's all. That's all I'm going to say about that. Oh, Neil, you dirtbag. No, it's all good. Yeah, take a look at that link right there. He just spoiled it.
Yeah, if you take a look at that picture, he's already moved the X to the right. We've been trying to get some things out on our Twitter pages and our Facebook pages to kind of tease you guys with some new screenshots, and not only things like the wilderness portals, but we recently teased the player vendors in our update this Friday that Sean's been working on, and we have some other things like TJ has been working on some mechanics to be able to post heads on spikes in the ground that would be deployable. So basically free placed heads on spikes. There's a couple screenshots of that on Twitter.
Yeah, to be fair, I haven't actually worked on that, but it won't take too long. That's all about that's not hard to get in, but yeah, that's going to be cool. So basically the idea behind that is you'll take I think it's the Impaler, the really skinny spiked pole arm. You just drop it on top of the head in your backpack and it sticks it, and then you can go place it somewhere. And I keep it fairly simple and neat, and then people look at the head, they'll see the name and date and who killed them and all that kind of stuff, just like you do when you're looking at the head in your backpack.
So we have one more page of questions on the forums, and then we'll move on to questions that were posed in the chat. There's quite a lot of them, so just bear with us, guys, here. So Quintessence asks, will the in-game chat ever get some work done, i.e. merge chat windows, different font sizes, new colors for text or custom font toggles?
Absolutely. There's some stuff that we're working on that we hope we get in, which will be really exciting, and I don't want to give any details on that out. But if that doesn't work out, then some time will be taken to do a complete 100% overhaul on that. It's garbage.
You heard it here, folks. Currently, it's garbage and will be redone by TJ. No, I definitely know it's something that we've talked about for quite some time in regards to enhancing. It's just one of those things on our to-do list that we haven't been able to get to yet. Definitely something that if we focus on a more customizable user interface and do an overhaul of that we'll be able to redo the chat system alongside that.
Yeah, it's just another one of those things. Like when it comes to deciding what to do before launch, we get the most impactful and as much as we can, and we have a limit, right? But once launch happens, we don't have a limit anymore. We don't have to worry about, okay, we got to get certain things done before this date or we're screwed. We can just sit back and we can focus all month long on user interface or whatever we want, and then have it ready for the next patch. We don't have to try and get as much in that month as possible. So it's going to be a lot better after launch, and things are going to be much nicer for all of us.
Yeah, I think that's something to keep in mind as well, is that we're currently still in pre-launch development. And what that means for us is that our processes that we have and our workflow is different now than it's what it's going to be post-launch. And one of the things that we're going to focus on after launch is the ability to have a public test server, which is going to provide an environment that once we get things past our initial QA, we can put out on a public test server that you guys can get access to and sign on to. And that will give you the ability to not only test the new content that will be coming to the live server to catch potential bugs or issues that we may not be able to catch during initial quality assurance, but also you'll be able to provide feedback on key aspects of the game to, potentially allow us to provide or get the insight needed to make changes if we need to get the system as good as possible. So not only are we trying to do a monthly patch cycle after launch where we focus on tweaks and fixing potential issues, that occurred in previous patches or adding in new mechanics, but we'll also be able to deploy hot fixes much more quickly than we've been able to do during early development, which is something that I know that on the dev side, the guys are definitely excited about. So I don't know if you want to expand on that at all, TJ or Brad, but I think I covered the gist of it.
I think you did a damn good job.
Will Darkfall ever get support for more character slots? We don't have any plans right now to have more character slots. Darkfall has always been, since its inception, a one account or one character per account type game, especially in regards to character reputation. And one of the things that we plan to implement is a name change mechanic, but we don't want to do so without having an ability to look through and see a character's aliases that they've had in the past. Because Darkfall, one of the big concepts of it that I've always personally enjoyed is the fact that your name holds an immense amount of weight and carries a reputation. That's why people back in Darkfall Online were known as very good middlemen for, engaging in trades with between other characters to make a smooth transaction. That's why certain players were known to be not trustworthy and that they would backstab you the moment they had a chance. And I think it makes it adds a lot of importance to your actions that you do in the world of Agon as you're playing. Liverbest Gibbs asks, what is your biggest fear about the upcoming launch in the area of game mechanics, content, or the crazy lengths that players will go to? I'm talking about balance problems, exploits, cheats, gold sellers, or missing features. I think on my end, my biggest fear is just ensuring that people are able to, easily install the game and log into the game server. And we have to keep in mind on our end as a development team that this game, is built from a foundation of a game that launched in 2009 and was shut down in 2012. So it's not a shallow shell of a game. It's a game that had a lot of core areas that we needed to focus on and to get ready for a commercial release. So on my end, at least in terms of my biggest concern, is just to make sure that everybody has a smooth experience at launch to not only download and install the game, but to be able to patch the game client and then create a character and log in. And if we can have a smooth day or two when we're going to get the biggest hit in demand that we're expecting at least, then I'll be able to breathe much easier. But that is definitely my number one concern. I don't know if you guys have any other things you want to talk about in regards to launch.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. The same thing for me. It's all about making sure people can get into the game trouble-free and play it. That's my biggest worry too. As far as content and things like that, there's going to be plenty of them for people that haven't played the game. There's actually enough going on as it is, even without the changes we made, to keep them busy for the first month, and then we're going to have more stuff coming anyway, and it's not going to stop. So I'm not real worried about that. It's just it's getting people in the game smoothly.
Technical
Yes,
difficulties with the last donation thing.
Yeah, sorry about the issues with the donation. Thank you, Big Boy Killsat. Greatly appreciate it.
Well, that's because I hijacked it, and it's all going to my email.
I'm sure you did. Any plans to encourage live streamers? We actually do have a Streamier initiative. I've mentioned it a few times, but we have a big list of streamers that we've pulled together over the last few months that we've reached out to try to get basically to see if they have interest in streaming the game at launch. And for some of these people, we may actually reach out to the community to see if anybody is willing to kind of bring them in during launch and show them the ropes so they can experience all that Darkfall has to offer. Because obviously playing it by yourself is a much different experience than playing it with players and getting to experience things like group PvP and going into dungeons and building up a city, et cetera, et cetera. So we do have plans to not only encourage live streamers that are very well known, but also just anyone in our community that wants to help stream as well. So keep your eyes out for that as we get closer to launch, because we'll be having a separate announcement on that. Reboy asks, using the metrics you have, what type of numbers are you expecting at launch? That's the $1 million question, isn't it? I think that it's, from what we've seen with the amount of purchases that we've had throughout alpha and early access, as well as the traffic that we've been seeing on our website, accounts that we have in our user database and our newsletter database, as well as some of the other things that we have scheduled to go live at and around release, from in regards to actual marketing campaigns where we're partnering with people. We're hoping to have a very strong launch. And for us, if we had 5 to 10,000 active people that were at launch, that to us would be a good starting point and provide our player base with a very active in-game environment to be able to create, a good environment to have fights, to go out and be able to farm with other players, create clans and alliances, etc., etc. So to give you an exact number, I can't really say, but what I hope is that at launch we get 5 to 10,000 active players. That would be my goal, and I think that it's very possible given the numbers that we see and the things that we have planned. Scrubby Bear asks, what steps will you be taking to make the game less ping based and dependent? You guys want to answer that on the dev side?
We'll go ahead and optimize the code as much as possible. I mean, it's all you can do. There's, we talked on the forums a little bit about, not much, but about client-side prediction, and that already exists in the game. I can't guarantee it happens everywhere, but essentially what client-side prediction is when the same code runs client and server at the same time, and then the server says yes or no, whether it can be allowed or not. So we will go through all that stuff in time and just optimize it. That's the only answer I can give you.
All right, I'm going to start answering a couple of the questions that Umberto's been putting together for us from the stream. And I apologize that it's taken us a while to get to those of you that are in the chat channel, but I wanted to go through some of these on this forum list here first. I'll circle back to a couple of the other questions that are on here in a few minutes. But one of the first questions that we have is, can we get more details on Nithron coin packages and the conversion from player points to coins? So let's talk about the Nithron coin packages first. With the update of our store that we have coming here and hopefully the next couple of days, we're going to have 3 subscription packages, one for 30 days recurring, one for 90 days recurring, and one for 180 days recurring, with the 90 days and the 180 days recurring giving a reduced subscription fee. 30 days is going to be $9.99 a month. And as I said, going from 30 to 90 and from 90 to 180 will decrease what that monthly subtotal is going to be. Outside of that, we're going to have 6 Nithron coin packages with higher tiers providing more bonus coins. And those Nithron coins will be able to be used for in-game services such as race changes, sex changes, name changes, as well as our in-game subscription token. For launch, we have planned our in-game subscription token and race and sex changes. If we can get to name changes with an alias, we certainly will, but if not, it'll be something that we'll implement after launch. And then once we start expanding on our art team, we're going to be focusing on a lot of things like cosmetics, whether it's dyes that you can purchase in the cash shop to dye your armor, or unique crafting recipes that allow you to create weapons that look a certain way. We don't want to implement anything in the Nithron coin shop itself, though, that will provide any in-game advantages or make the game in any way, as we call it, pay to win. Darkfall is all about risk versus reward, and we just want to be able to have the option for players to get things to customize their character more, or have things like fireworks and things like that that might be fun that they can utilize. So as we continue to expand on development of the game post-launch, we'll be able to consistently add in new things that people will be able to purchase at the Nithron coin shop. I hope that answers your question. The second part of that question was, what's the conversion from player points to coins? We actually, with our new persistence system, we've been pulling some data on how many points and mysterious essences are out in the market right now. And we'll be giving an announcement probably next Friday in our next update of what people can expect in regards to the conversion rate as we get closer to the actual shutdown of early access leading up to launch. So I'm sorry that I don't have an answer for you specifically right now today, but we will definitely give you more details on that next week or leading up into the weekend. FSO asks, is this game pay to win? Absolutely not. I personally grew up on a lot of old school MMOs like Ultima Online and Asheron's Call. I know a lot of the other guys like TJ and Brad did as well. And having a game that's centered around risk versus reward that's also pay to win is just it's almost an oxymoron. It just doesn't work. And we want to, as I said before, provide in-game services for players like the ability to change your race or to change your sex, or the ability to make your character look a little bit different or have some unique dyes in your armor, etc. But we don't want to provide any sort of in-game advantages or ways to make it so that if you pay money to someone that you'll be able to get an advantage or increase skill gain or et cetera, that a lot of other games do. Thank you, Train of Pain and Killset, for the donation. Greatly appreciate it.
Train. I used to watch his stream, The Invader, all the time.
You got sniped a couple times, if I remember, too.
He gets sniped a lot of times.
What changes have been done to the alignment to promote cooperation between players? We implemented our single alignment system. So previously, Darkfall Online had 3 racial alliances between the 6 actual races, and that defined the alignment interaction between players. We eliminated that in one of our previous patches and implemented a strict single alignment system. So you're either blue to one another or you're red to one another based off of your actions out in the world. And the reason why we did that is not only does it simplify the actual alignment system mechanics to new players and basically anybody out in the world, but it also provides the ability for more interactions with various types of player types, no matter their race, if they're more on the blue side or more on the red side. And it gives us the ability to expand on things like our control towers, where players will be able to expand their territory and define whether or not the area is lawful or lawless, as well as give incentives for players that are lawful, such as capital recall to capital cities and other things that we want to be able to implement after launch to encourage various player-style interactions. I mean, I remember when I first started playing Darkfall Online in 2009, in the very beginning, I thought that the alignment system actually mattered. And I remember a lot of my interactions with players out in the world, if I looked at them and saw that they were blue, I would assume that they weren't necessarily a kill on sight player. And it led to me, going out and farming monsters and even going into some dungeons on occasion with players that I didn't know very well. But because of the alignment that they showed, it gave more of an indication of what I could expect from them as a type of player. So we want to encourage those kind of more diverse interactions than simply kill on sight, so that not only does it provide a better environment for new players entering the game, but it also allows us to expand on systems to give more options to players and how they can play the game itself. I keep hearing the help me sound effect. Is that going to get added back in? Brad put in the help me sound effect for when you follow our channel.
And donate.
And donate. Thank you. I have it muted so I wouldn't know. But thank you, Gloomy, for the $15 donation. Greatly appreciate it. So we, I guess the best way to say that, or to answer that question, is we definitely want to get it in somehow. We haven't decided exactly how we're going to get the help me sound in, but I think it's also a great area to expand upon too. And that's even something that you could have in the Nithron coin shop, where you can buy a death sound that's custom to you.
I was just gonna say, yeah, it's coming to the cash shop, guys.
I mean, I'm not saying that help me would be added necessarily to the cash shop, but
Probably be a good seller.
We certainly have the option. I mean, if we could always do very unique death sounds and gank animations that are only found in the cash shop, and that's a perfect example of something that's not paid to win because it's just an animation or just a sound. So let's keep going through the list here. Will the siege system be overhauled because it promotes boredom in its current state and has some broken mechanics, i.e. self-sieges? To answer that question, yes. It's actually one of our first planned patch cycles after launch. at least something we want to get to in the first couple months after launch. The siege system right now is kind of convoluted in the sense that if you're an attacker, you have to play defense for a lot of the siege, and if you're on defense, many times you're forced to go out and play attack to take down siege stones. So, we've had a lot of ideas internally of how we could alter the siege mechanics so that it's more of a tug of war type of mechanic where you can, put out things like siege camps that you could spawn out of, etc. But I know that this is something that we're going to want to bring out to the community to get more feedback on, which is why, for the time being, we're holding off on focusing on this until after launch. But we do agree that the siege system needs a lot of work, and essentially an overhaul of the mechanics and how you can initiate and finalize sieges is going to be one of the main focuses for us after we launch the game.
TJ, you don't happen to remember the file that all the siege settings are in? I'll pull it open.
Not offhand, no.
No, all right, I'll just keep looking. Can't remember the name of it.
Okay, so one of the questions we've seen a couple times is, what will you be doing to prevent any kind of corruption among the team? I think this is a very important question, and it's definitely one that I'm happy to answer. We made a decision when we first started this project.
Look for Conquest.
Did you find it?
Sorry, carry on.
No, it's okay. We made a decision very early on in this project that we were going to be open with who we were as players in Darkfall Online. I mean, we could have, on our end, tried to keep our names anonymous for who we were, but we felt being out, up front and outright with you guys in the community was the better plan of action to take. Now, that has obviously led to some people making assumptions that because there are previous Darkfall Online players in the team, such as myself as the community manager, that we have a sort of bias in decision makings on potential abuse or exploiting or hacking, or even having some sort of bias when it comes to game design decisions. And I can tell you that is absolutely not the case, and very, very far from it. We have people on our team from all over the place when it comes to, where they come from, their prior gaming experience in Darkfall, what clans they used to play with. And in the very beginning, when we started, getting tickets from people and private messages on potential abuse in the game when we started Alpha, we came up with a process very early on where anyone who may have known somebody that is in question for abusive behavior or, potential exploits or hacking or anything along those lines where a decision has to be made by the team on a course of action, anyone who had any prior experience with those players would be taken out of that decision-making process or having any influence. And we stick to that very strongly. As an example, I used to play in a clan called the Nightcrow Tribe, TNT. And, I still have good relationships with those guys and play other games with them on occasion. And if any of them was ever in question on their behavior in game, I would not be involved in any decision making. And there would be multiple people on the team who would be involved in making a decision on that particular player, without my input. And we take that very strongly because, again, we made the decision to be open and honest about who we are very early on because we wanted to be transparent with you guys. But we also want to be clear that we're not engaging and will not tolerate any sort of corruption or bias from whether it's dealing with somebody who is accused of hacking or caught exploiting, or if it's dealt with a concern of something that happens on the forum, etc. It doesn't really matter when it comes to what it may be, but we take it very strongly and seriously any sort of a potential accusation, and want to do everything in our power to prevent bias. And I think it's important to bring up early easy anti-cheat here, EAC, because EAC allows us to make, in many regards, some of the decision making when it comes to potential hacks or abuse out of our hands completely and into a third party that we partner with and are able to customize the easy anti-cheat client to. So if there ever is any sort of question of something that comes up, we also have the ability to have a third party have the final say too. So again, I've seen the concerns in the forums. I've seen the PMs that I've received myself on the forums from some of you guys, and I just want everyone to know that we take this topic very seriously. And if we ever catch anybody on our team engaging in any sort of activity that is biased or any sort of favoritism, they will be promptly and swiftly removed from the team, because we've all worked way too hard and for too long on this project to be letting anybody jeopardize that for us. So I hope that answers that question, because again, I've seen it a few times. But again, it's something that we take very seriously, which is why we have our internal processes set in place to deal with any potential abusive behavior. So Bloomy Inc. asks, games like Ultima Online, World Online, etc. use skill caps to prevent godly characters from being able to use all skills, weapons, spells, and fights. Do you think this is a concern for the player base? And will you be addressing it at all to limit the power of endgame veterans? So Darkfall Online and Darkfall in general, was built around the concept of character freedom. And in the past, they had made mention during early development of a skill cap, but as we all know, Darkfall Online launched without one. And I think as long as a new player is able to get into the game and progress their character in a way that they can compete in a reasonable timeline and a reasonable fashion with veteran players, that there is no need for a skill cap or locking characters into particular classes or hard lock roles. I think that's one of the aspects of Darkfall that makes it very unique, and one of the things that we on the team like a lot. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that we can't expand on the play styles of players, whether that be through things like titles that you can get from completing tasks with our new task system, or when we go into the combat overhaul that we have planned with our armor smithing and tailoring mastery changes, focusing on removing the current hard lock specializations and adding in more soft specializations that characters can acquire and spec into. There really is many possibilities for us to do, but we want to ensure that we always keep it open so that characters aren't locked out of certain things and have access to everything, because it's one of the aspects that makes the game very unique. This is a question for you, TJ. Will bank inventories ever be synced to the server so that the item positions are saved?
Bank inventories?
Bank inventories, yeah.
I mean, they are saved, not to the server right now, though. There was actually a bug I just fixed that Captain and Clan Bank weren't both being saved. It would only save one of them, but that's fixed now. But I doubt it'll ever be on the server, honestly. Really, what we need to do is just make a better processor of that GUI persistence, or at least a way to keep it lean so it doesn't get overloaded.
All right, let's see what else is on here. What has been your favorite development section to work on, and what was the most challenging? You want to take that, Brad? I think TJ's on a phone call right now.
What's the most challenging? Is that what you're asking?
What has been your favorite, and what has been the most challenging to work on?
I guess, I mean, my most favorite thing to work on, probably the world builder, even though it's kind of crude and in a lot of ways it does do a lot of cool things as well once you learn it. Took a long time to learn it because didn't come with instructions. So, and I'd say the hardest thing is probably wrapping your mind around the architecture of Darkfall on a whole, and then getting to a point where you can actually start to do useful things.
I think for me, from a game design perspective, the most difficult thing has been prioritizing. I make note to anytime there's any sort of feedback or anything that I see on the forums or that I get in private messages. Um, I always send to not only the game design team, but to various team members that may be either working directly on that subject or may be involved in that subject. And we have a very massive list of things that we want to address, whether it's adding in new mechanics, enhancing current mechanics in games, addressing bugs that may be lingering in the game, enhancing things like the artificial intelligence of mobs and monsters, enhancing performance. Everything takes development resources and time, and it's all about, from a game design standpoint, figuring out what we can prioritize, for us to not only get ready for launch and to launch the game itself, but to be able to be prepared for the next series of patches after launch as well. But in regards to what's been the most fun, I think it's starting to see some of the things that I've always wanted in Darkfall Online to actually get implemented into Darkfall Rise of Agon. Things like champion spawns, that's straight out of Ultima Online that I used to love playing. And we have the mechanics in game now, but it's something that we can consistently expand upon, indefinitely. Same thing with the unique rare mobs that are going to be spawning out in the world. It's something that we can always consistently expand upon now that the mechanics are in the game. And even things like dropping items on the ground, something as simple as that is just, it adds a little bit more sand to the sandbox for our player base and for our community. And it's things like that that I love talking about with the team, and I love seeing you guys in the community talk about. And it's those kind of things that we really want to greatly expand upon post-launch, because it's what makes a lot of those old school MMOs so much fun. I mean, I used to go around in Ultima Online and pretend I was a beggar and beg people for money, and I got filthy rich doing that. And if you give players the tools needed to do things along that nature and play the kind of game that they want, it makes for a much livelier and enjoyable environment. So those kind of mechanics are certainly what's been the most fun for me.
TJ wasn't here for
I
the
got a
question.
phone call.
Back. Now he can answer.
Yeah, okay. So TJ, the question is, what has been your favorite development section that you've worked on, or thing that you've been worked on from a development standpoint, and what has been the most challenging?
I don't know about favorite. There's a lot of them actually. It's all been a lot of fun. I just enjoy it. But the most challenging, the bank. That was obnoxious. Once we figured that out, it's been pretty good. But yeah, definitely the bank. That was a royal pain in the ass, and I mean that hurt us for months, right? So yeah, and then I think that's the hardest. That's the most annoying thing, and then everything else has just been a lot of fun. I like everything. And the like I dynamic stuff is my favorite. So anytime we get into that kind of thing, that's really exciting. Like you said, dropping items on the ground, being able to place the towers and those dynamic spawns, and if you think about it, you can combine those together and create new things using those same mechanics. And it's use your imagination. It's pretty powerful. So we got some cool things we can cook up.
One of the questions that you missed, TJ, that you might want to hop in here on in regards to the bank, your favorite thing. Will bank inventories ever be synced to the server so that the item positions are saved?
I mean, we can now, especially with the new persistence. It's not as restrictive as the old one. And I think the big problem with the old one is storing a lot of information on it is that it continued to grow in size and it affected the performance, where the one we use now, the size doesn't matter. So I don't... Yeah, it's not supposed to, right?
I guess we could then, but there is that max file size, right?
Yeah, but that's huge. I mean, we could just do one individually, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
So we could. I mean, we could do that. We already talked about, at least I think Andrew and I at one point talked about putting binds and stuff server side, so people don't have to continue copying and pasting their files. I mean, that makes a big difference.
It'd be nice.
maybe have a download option or something in case they want to share. But yeah, I don't see why not.
So Dartimus asks, can we ever expect entirely new areas of the map, new continent or island with new player holdings or fresh content, even instant zones that hold unique new content? So I'll answer on the unique or the instant zones. We don't have any plans of any sort of instant zones, but we do have the ability to expand on the map itself. As a matter of fact, I think Brad, if you want to comment, has already created some new areas that will be going live with the Wilderness Portal Network, including, I think, potentially a couple houses. You want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not creating, the map itself. I don't know what it would take to actually make it bigger or something like that, but there's a lot of empty space as it is, that we could throw islands and stuff like that. And we probably will at some point. And I have done a little bit while making the portals and all that, and I have placed a few new houses, which are just kind of randomly placed houses that you guys will have to find, and they'll probably be pretty valuable because some of them are in cool places and stuff like that. But yeah, that's going to be an ongoing thing all the time. This isn't going to be a fire and forget. We're just going to keep working on the game, and hopefully we only get more time to work on the game because it experiences some sort of success.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really important because I've seen a couple questions in regards to, what is the expected longevity of the game. We're not in this project and working on this game just to launch and walk away. I mean, I don't think anybody on this team would have done what they've done the past 2 years and spent as much time as we had if it was just to launch and walk away. We want to be able to be here 5, even 10 years from now and look back and say, this is what we got Darkfall as, and this is what we were able to turn the Darkfall franchise into, and really have, a strong community behind us at that point in time. So again, I think it's important to stress that launch is not any sort of finish line for us. It's really more of a starting point where we get the game out and everything that you guys do and the effects you have on the world actually matter, and we can just consistently expand upon the game from there and add in new content, add in new mechanics, add in fun things for you to be able to do. Even, work on adding in things like new dungeons and new areas, as you guys mentioned before. So don't think of launch as the end. Think of it more as the start of what we'll be able to do, especially with a steady, hopefully monthly revenue that we, can get at that point in time. It'll give us more resources to be able to get content out even faster. Coder asks, when are you going to add an in-game voice chat?
When, huh? That's yeah, when it happens.
Yeah, we've discussed it, and we've looked at one solution or product, but it's very early stages, and we can't really say what that would be and how restricted it would be, because there are situations where it could be, more annoying than actually something that enhances the game. So it would have to be looked at very carefully.
Yeah, it's one of those things that could definitely enhance the experience of the game, but it could also take away from it if not implemented correctly. But as Brad and TJ said, it is something that we're looking into, and if we have more information in the future, we certainly will let you know. It's definitely not off the table.
It's just like Pain Train just mentioned. There's like no way, no voice chat. That's kind of the point behind why we're so hesitant. We don't want to just put it in there because then have all the little kids running around calling everybody a douchebag or whatever. But
or have people
I don't think so.
Syncing like screams during a siege to like
oh
people
Jesus.
out and stuff.
Yeah, a bunch of screaming or just loud music playing all the time. It's just obnoxious shit. So we would have to do it in a way that anybody who didn't want to listen to it wouldn't be able to, or that it could be moderated. And so that's the real reason why we aren't just jumping into it. But other than the fact that getting the technology into the game is in its early stages is kind of iffy anyway. So we'll just see.
All right, let's see here. What are you doing to actively prevent online bullying? Asked by Bonnie CSGO. Well, I mean, there's a difference between bullying in Darkfall using in-game mechanics and just griefing. And, we want to ensure that we can provide our new players as best of an experience as possible. A lot of our changes that we've done in alpha and early access are aimed specifically at new players and their experience. So we don't, bullying is going to happen, but there will be a line that, if crossed, we may take action on. And, that line may be consistent spawn camping of a new player or something along those lines. I mean, there is, we can't implement necessarily in-game mechanics that can stop all bullying because this is a hardcore game, so we don't want to. But we can certainly try to do what we can to prevent the type of abuse that certain players can instill on others to completely ruin their gaming experience. Let's see here. With portals being removed from player cities and plans to take rare nodes or to reduce the amount of rare ore that's coming from nodes, do you guys have plans for making holdings more valuable? Do you guys want to comment on that?
Yeah, it goes along with territory control and such. That'll make it more valuable. One of the things we talked about with territory control is the cache. Some people compared it to the game that shall not be named, but whatever. I don't know how that mechanic worked. I don't know anything about it, so we're just designing it in our own way, and with your feedback, we can perfect it. It doesn't matter what this other game did. But essentially, you go out and you place a tower, you place a cache, and as people farm on your land, it generates some income in there, and people will be able to fight over those resources that are going into those caches, and people could steal it and all kinds of shit. So, there's more going to be value to holding a city. There's value anyway. Why did people own a city that didn't have a mine? If mines were the only reason to own a city? Because it's cool, for one, and then location, and then just the fact of having it.
It's a place to
there's a lot of reasons to have it.
It's a place to call home, and removing the portals won't decrease the value of holdings. It will increase the value of their proximity depending on what's around it and really what portals might be close by, and you're going to see a whole new wave of what value things have based on the changes we're making.
Yeah, it's not only the location of what portals are near you, but it's also what mobs are going to be near you too. Because keep in mind, when we say we've done an economy overhaul, it's not merely changing a couple numbers here and there. It's a pretty big overhaul from top to bottom. So there's going to be some areas and some mob spawns that are much more valuable than they currently are, and others that may be less valuable than they are as it stands right now. So certain holdings are going to have more value depending on what is around them, and that's only going to increase as we consistently expand in new content and things to fight over and new materials to go out and seek.
And I'm definitely, when I'm going around the map adding portals, I'm definitely considering all the holdings that were kind of considered just crappy because of location, because you were literally on an island and stuff like that. That's all being taken into consideration, so that all those holdings should have more value than they did previously.
Rude Boy asks, any plans to add things like player-created signs, paintings, notes for house decorations, or simply for RP purposes? Absolutely. That's one of those things that we already, have decided as a team we want to do. It's just a matter of finding the time to implement the mechanics, and if there's any artwork necessary to get the artwork completed. Housing, as an example, is an area that we want to focus on outside of just adding in new decorations for the house. Also, new ways to acquire houses and to be able to customize your houses, and things like having tabards for your clans or custom ship sales are all things that we want to be able to do to provide more customization options for our players. Again, it just goes back to finding the time itself to do so. So things like that are something that won't happen until after launch, but depending on how launch goes, we'll get to it as soon as we can. Somebody else also asked, what are you going to do to address some of the chat and behavior that currently occurs in game? We'll be releasing our community code of contact, or excuse me, community code of conduct here in the coming weeks before launch, and they will be our policies that we will be enforcing at launch. And penalties for breaking our policies, not only when it comes to chat channels, but also in-game actions as well, when it comes to things like potentially exploiting, etc. Characters will have severe punishments so that we can ensure that, that kind of behavior is not tolerated. So if you are currently used to being able to go in game in alpha and early access and break our terms of use in chat without repercussion, I would, strongly caution you to do so at launch, because you will, jeopardize not only the access that you'll have to the game itself, but having the character that you have as it stands, because part of the penalties will be, complete character bans and bank deletions. So we want to ensure that all walks of players can feel comfortable in the game world. It is a harsh game world, and it's a rough world in the world of Agon. We're not planning to change that, but we can ensure that people follow the rules that we have in place, and if they don't, then we're going to have penalties that will definitely incentivize players to start following the rules. So again, it's kind of a loosely worded word of caution to everybody, just to be smart when they're engaging in activities in chat and in the game come launch, because I don't want to see some of you guys losing your characters, but we will do that if need be. Question by Saronis. What is the current plan with city guard towers, arcane damage, notice of enemies entering territory? Arcane damage is severely mitigated with arcane rings, making city towers useless. Any plans to implement stronger guard towers, making guard towers a means of notice when a player enters your city or perhaps your territory? Do you guys want to take that one?
What was that again?
It's in regards to city towers, player city towers, how they function, and if we're going to have any changes to
Arcane
make them more
damage, all that
valuable.
kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if there's been any discussion as far as arcane damage. Honestly,
I can't recall any.
no, I don't think we've had that discussion. So, I mean, if it's something that concerns everybody, they need to bring it up in the forums, and so we can get a discussion going on it. More than just, yeah. Sorry, I'm a little tired, but yeah, just bring it up in the forums and start some discussions, and that's the best way to bring that to our attention.
I think one thing to make note of is we've always talked since the beginning of trying to change the way that the guard towers themselves actually function. I mean, if any of you guys played Darkfall Online, you remember that there was talk of like NPC guards that you could have in your cities. That's something that's definitely much more sandboxy than a static tower that, zaps you when you get close to it. But that's something that we would have to look, more closely into, and would definitely be something that would be a larger project for us to focus on. So we don't have any plans at the moment, but it's definitely something that we may evaluate after launch, or try to focus on in a subsequent patch after launch. Any lessons learned from Unholy Wars that is helping in Rise of Agon? Unholy Wars didn't do everything wrong per se. There were some things in the game that I thought at least was the start of something good. As an example, their area of influence system, which was meant to try to incentivize expanding territories, was a decent system, but they never expanded upon it. What we're doing or planning to do with control towers could be the first start of that, as an example. They definitely enhance the graphics of the game to make them a little bit more modern. I still love to this day the graphics of the Darkfall source code and the engine that it currently stands on right now. I definitely think there's areas of enhancement, but I never felt that the game world, especially on high settings with shadows, was anything but gorgeous myself. But that doesn't mean that we can't and won't enhance the actual engine to be able to handle better quality art assets. I know that's something that the art team themselves have been asking for, that we'll try to get to after launch. But in general, I mean, the Unholy Wars did a lot of things that we don't want to follow as well. I mean, implementing basically soft class system, changing the way that the FPS mechanics functioned, adding in things like the prowess system, which I personally didn't think was a terrible system, but definitely not something that belongs in Darkfall: Rise of Agon. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely things that we learned not to do from that game, and there's some things that they did do well. Like, I also think an example would be their armor die system that they had. That was definitely something that I think was pretty well done, that we could take a note from as well. Hag's Rampage says, will you populate some of the empty areas, ruins out in the world, like the ruins east of Gulgat? The quick answer to that is yes. I mean, already with the Wilderness Portal network, some of the areas that were currently vacant that looked like there was something that belonged there may have a Wilderness Portal. We also can implement things like unique spawning mobs in these locations, and even further down the line, create some new dungeons where some of these unique areas that you may have seen previously a door at would lead to a dungeon, as an example. So there's many things that we can do. There's some things that are going to get done, as I mentioned, with the Wilderness Portal system, but it is an area that we can always expand upon, for sure. I used to remember going to so many different places in Darkfall Online that looked really cool, but they looked almost unfinished. There was no monsters there. There was no entrance to any dungeons. There was no quest lines that took you there. There was really nothing but just a painted door or something that you couldn't get past and get into. And it always left a sense of intrigue that we have the opportunity to really fill into. Dardamus asks, can we get some raid tier bosses introduced that tie into the lore of the game, gods like Melek, etc.? That's absolutely the goal. Our lead lore writer, Gauntleteer, who you might have seen posting a little bit in the chat channel, he's been doing all of the lore for our unique mods. I think he's up to 70 at this point, and he's also been doing some of the work on the lore that we're trying to tie into the game itself. But in terms of big raid bosses, outside of the champion spawns, anything that would be new, we would have to make a new art asset for, and new animations. So it's not a matter of not wanting to do so. It's just a matter of having the time to get to it. It could always be something that we expand upon down the line, though.
Something I want to touch on too is the current champions are, consider them placeholders. The only thing holding us back from implementing brand new mobs right now is the animations. And once we have the time after launch to figure that out and get new animations in game, we will create brand new mobs, NPCs for the champions, and new animations and new attacks for them. So they'll be more unique. And then of course at that point we'll be able to add just about anything we want to the game, because I think that's our last blocking issue for putting new stuff in.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's blocking. I really haven't had time to even truly look at it.
Exactly, yeah. And it's not about getting an animator; it's about getting the animations into the game. It's different than just creating the animations. It's converting it to something the game can read. We haven't looked into it yet, but we'll get there.
Once we can do it, then sure, we probably will get an animator.
Sorry, I pushed down my talk button here. One of the questions on the forums is, will we ever get a type of ranking system within the game similar to arena rankings in MMOs such as World of Warcraft, so other players can see where they stand compared to other people out in the community? I think that brings up the topic of the current in-game journal. I know that one of our goals, and maybe you can expand upon this, TJ, one of our goals is to completely redo the in-game journal and all the mechanics that interact with it right now. Those of you guys in game know that it's very slow many times. Yeah, it's a piece of shit, as TJ said. So we want to completely redo it and redesign it. And one of the things that we could implement when that occurs is definitely a ranking system. I think it's something that would fit in the game as long as it's done properly and done well. So that would be something that would be held off until we actually do the redesign and the rework of the in-game journal.
So I guess that's progs. We discussed the killboard thing on the forums a couple times. I'm a big fan of killboards and kill mails and things. I played Eve for years. It's definitely something that I think we should work on getting into. But as far as a public API, who knows? I mean, maybe we can set up something for that, for those specific things. Just like character data, like your kills, how many kills you've had, how many ganks you've had, how many times you've died, whatever. Maybe your animals and shit, or NPCs. But eventually maybe an API, but definitely want to get into like a killboard thing or and that ties, and the reason why I brought that up, interrupted you, was because it ties directly into what you were talking about as far as just rankings. I mean, basically it's just keeping stats, and yeah, we're going to start keeping stats on everything. I started keeping stats on how many times I was sprinting. I don't think I'm going to keep that one because that number got obnoxious. But and so once we have the stats, then it's just a matter of creating the graphic or the GUI to go along with it and display it. And then you compare it to other people's, and then you got your rankings. It's pretty simple, really. We'll get there.
Cayman Axe asks, when will we get a graphics overhaul? That's a matter of really, a good question of when, because we can't really answer it right now. It all depends on what happens at launch and thereafter. The graphics themselves is more of like a wish list for us than a necessity. We would rather add a lot of new content than do a complete redesign of the graphics, because we think it would be more impactful. If the game's fun and entertaining and there's things for players to do, it doesn't need to have the most modern 2017 graphics, especially if it takes away possibly from performance. So
shit, I interrupted myself. What were you just saying? You gotta remind me what the hell I was gonna say.
Talking about the graphics.
Oh yeah. So back to that previous question, what did we learn from UW? I think they focused too much on graphics, and so therefore they didn't have any content. It seems like that's like the majority of what they focused on was the graphics.
I mean, the biggest thing to learn from UW was, they changed all the wrong things, especially at first. Maybe they tried to make up for it later. Don't know, wasn't around, but they changed too much of the core of what makes Darkfall great right off the bat.
Exactly. And if we can come in and create better stuff and create content and get people going and people are loving this, then the graphics can come later, and it's just a bonus. Gameplay is always better than graphics.
Hey, Ultima Online didn't have amazing graphics, and there's still people to this day that play it because of how much content there is in there. And if we can focus on adding in those new mechanics and the new kind of content that you guys want in the community, I mean, graphics really don't mean much at all at that point, especially where they stand right now. Now, are there things we can do to enhance them so that we can add in, better looking textures down the line? Absolutely. And if we have the time and the manpower to do so, we certainly will. But adding in new content and things to do is definitely more of a priority.
actually messing around with the animator now or something. I don't know. Just the first time I ever opened this thing is right now. It's pretty interesting.
So we're coming up on 3:40 right now. I think we have a few more questions that we can get to. So I'm going to look here on the forum, see if I'm missing anything.
Yeah, that's something we discussed, Artemis, on the forums. You know, when it comes to changing up the mob spawns, it's almost pointless because you're going to know exactly where everything is in just a matter of a few days, and so that mystery is gone anyway. And the amount of time, and like I explained on the forums, it's not a difficult procedure; it is a time-consuming procedure going and changing around mob spawns, and the amount of time does not equal even anywhere near the value we would get out of that.
And we went through again with a fine tooth and comb of the economy itself, and made many changes to skinning tables, enchanting material, loot tables, what drops where, how much gold drops from certain monsters. So even though we didn't jumble the mob spawn locations, we jumbled what they may be dropping. So it kind of can achieve the same effect in essence in regards to what you're looking for.
I think that's an even bigger mystery because now you don't just have to go around and find it; you have to kill it and see what you actually get.
Yeah, there's going to be very few, if any, loot tables that are the same or even close to the same.
And keep in mind, as we add in new materials as well, either new ingredients for crafting recipes or new items themselves, then that will have an effect on certain mob spawn value and worth too. Our goal for launch is to have a good starting point for the economy, and then we can expand upon it from there. And part of that is ensuring that, as we alluded to before, we drive a lot of value in mastery and gear, and that means having a good control on the amount of resources entering the economy. Any new sound assets? Our composer, George, is working on a track for each of the racial areas, as well as a new soundtrack for our launch trailer, which we will probably be putting into game as well. In terms of new sound assets themselves, that will be something that we will work to focus on after launch. Again, it really comes down to what occurs at launch and what sort of consistent monthly revenue that we have, so that we can just figure out in what areas of the team we can expand upon. And enhancing on the amount of sound assets in the game, as well as the amount of art assets in the game, are certainly things that we would put priority on if we're able to expand the team there. Crass Tree Tall asks, will more resources be removed from NPC vendors to allow players to provide those items? Leather, for example. You want to touch on that, Brad?
What was the question?
Will more resources be removed from NPC vendors, such as leather?
Yes, I believe that is getting removed for launch. I'm not the primary person on the economy, but I believe that's the plan, but don't quote me.
I have the notes from all the changes that I've done so far, so it may be the case, but I'd have to confirm for you. Crass, the big thing here to keep in mind is that our goal is to thank you, Screwless. Our goal is to make sure that all items are sought after out in the world and can be driven through a player-driven economy. And having a lot of things on the NPC vendors really prohibits that. So I want to say the answer to your question is yes, but I would have to just confirm.
But in general, I mean, there's definitely going to be more ways to get stuff out in the world. and less dependency on vendors if possible, NPC vendors anyway.
Let's see what other questions there are here that we might have missed.
Quite a few popping through.
Gloomy says or asks, we always dreamed of devs randomly playing as badass mobs that randomly show up in the world and cause terror. Will those type of things be possible in anything you would care to do? The answer to that question is definitely a resounding yes. I know that from a GM standpoint, the guys definitely want to put together things for the community. It's all a matter of making sure the event is fun and that we have the manpower and resources to consistently do them. So definitely things that we want to not only have planned for at launch, but also throughout development itself. And this is a perfect example of when we implement new potential monsters. As an example, we could have events where in the unveiling of them, they can be run by developers and by GMs, so that we can have some sort of in-game event, as well as tying things to lore as well. From the lore team, so we can have events that actually coincide with the lore of the game too. I know that's something I've always personally wanted in the Darkfall franchise. So, and our lore writer Jake, he definitely is hoping to be able to have influence on the in-game world itself too through the lore. Screwloose asked, what is the next biggest piece of new content being worked on to be added, etc.? I think the thing scheduled for launch is the task system, which is currently on the test server, or at least the first set of tasks aimed more towards new player guidance and new player experience, as well as the Wilderness Portal Network and our economy overhaul. Outside of that, we have the deployable vendors and the control towers that we hope to get in one of the first patch cycles after launch. And then a revamp of the siege system. And then the combat overhaul patch. I don't want to say overhaul because the mechanics are going to say, the same, but we're going to just expand on certain areas. So the combat patch, which coincides with armor smithing and tailoring mastery. So those are the things to focus on or to expect shortly, in the months following launch.
Help me!
Will Ruby and Niflheim be on par with Karen and Yasam as far as getting gold and mats for launch? I would have to look at the specifics, but I would say the answer to that question is probably yes. I mean, like I said, the whole world's been redesigned in regards to the economy itself. Anywhere from gold to resources to skinny max, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of things out there that will be changing.
I hear a lot of different stories from Mounted Combat as either really good, too powerful, or in the right place. And some people say it needs to be a little bit better. So I think as far as Mounted Combat goes, we need to get the keys fixed. And then when everybody's on the same playing field as far as having their mount binds and everything, then we can get a better sense of how it plays out. We don't want it to be overpowered, of course, but it needs to be better than it was. So it's just we'll continue to tweak it just like everything else. And so yeah.
And I think when AV did the
Doven. Oh my god.
What's
Thank
that?
you. I don't even know. Look at what he put in chat. I look like Max the Riot. Dylan Massett from Bates Motel.
I don't know. I don't see that. But anyway, when AV did the implemented the Insta-Ray patch, and in the same patch lowered the multiplier bonus on mounted damage, they pretty much whacked mounted fighting twice. Pretty much killed it that day. Like literally, I never fought on a mount again after that day. So I think there's some room there to improve mounted fighting because it's just not really viable right now at all. like it. I mean, it might have been overpowered at some point early on in Darkfall, especially when people didn't know how to respond to it, if you didn't know how to move around mounts and stuff like that. But once they did that, it was over. Mounted fighting was over.
All right, let's see what else is coming out here. Filey asks, with DF before, in order to have time to PvE, PvP, I had to have a second account to do nothing but gather resources. Will I be required to do this again in order to have time to play the game? The short answer to that is no. We want, in a working economy, you shouldn't have to go out and spend an hour just to get a basic gear bag to go out and have fun in. You should be able to gear up rather quickly, go out and do the activities, whether it's farming monsters, going to dungeons, or looking for PvP, without, consistently every time you're losing, feeling like you've wasted hours of your time. And on top of that, having a bunch of accounts that are out there AFK harvesting is not necessarily good for the game either, because it's an influx of resources on an account that really isn't active. One of the changes that we did is we increased the speed that you can harvest materials while also decreasing the output per node, which means you can get more resources rather quickly, but you have to actually be a little active at your computer while you do so. And on top of that, we made changes to the amount of iron ore that's required in basic metal sets up to plate, which means that you'll be able to gear up rather quickly in basic armor sets themselves, so that a new player going out to farm in a set of plate, as an example, is not going to feel a complete sense of devastation when he loses that plate set as he might have felt before.
And to top it all off, you have the vendors coming in where players will be able to sell that stuff for you to you. I mean, that's something that we didn't have throughout Darkfall, was a good way to, a simple way to trade. And so everybody was far more inclined to do everything themselves. And I think the vendors themselves will change that drastically.
Yeah, for sure.
So do you guys have any other questions here? We're coming up close to 4 p.m. So I figure maybe we can cut it around then. And we'll save this video so that you guys can review it later if you want, or go back if you missed anything. Progs asks, can vendors be placed in houses? I don't think the current plan was to allow them to be placed in houses, was it?
No, so the idea is they can be placed anywhere with a few exceptions. We're going to there's going to be a radius where they can't be too close to a bank, to player or NPC vendors. We can do the same thing with houses, and it's easily adjustable. So we won't have to let them in houses more than likely. So it'll just be out and around your house would probably work. You won't be able to place them near dungeon entrances. Well, you will, but just not too close. So you can't visually block anything. They're not going to have collision, so you can't exploit that. There's also going to be something implemented so that when you place it near a mob spawn, you will not be able to go into... Oh, that distracted me. So if you place it near a mob spawn, you won't be able to use it for your personal bank. The only way to actually put items onto it will be to take the items to an actual bank, convert it into a package of some sort, and then take it back and place it on the vendor. And that prevents someone from using it as a placeable bank out in the middle of nowhere.
Deployable vendors are just one of the things that we want to expand on when it comes to things that are deployable in the world. So there will be exceptions to where you can place them. Obviously we have to make sure that they're not exploitable. But one of the things that will be beneficial to us after launch is we'll have the ability to have our public test server, hopefully a couple weeks after we go live. And that should give us the opportunity to get some more feedback on testing these vendors from you guys out in the community. Okay, so Grumbags is asking about ship combat, overhauling ship and naval combat. So that's a very good question. Naval combat is one of the most unique aspects of the actual game itself, but unfortunately, it's very lacking in many regards, and it's kind of one-dimensional. So one of the first things we have to do on our end is add more content out in the ocean, things for players to do, whether it's naval trade routes, unique monsters that you can fight out in the ocean seas, or even having things that you can only get from fishing out in open water. There's a lot of different things that we can work on to try to incentivize people going out on the seas. One of the things that we've already done is change the cost of ships in ship crafting so that lower end ships are more it's more feasible for casual players and smaller clans to get some basic ships to go out in the water with than it was prior. Now, in regards to ship combat itself, we all agree that as it stands right now, it's pretty one-dimensional with having one hitbox and having it almost be a repair shard race of who's going to last with repair shards, and instead it should be more tactical and require more strategy. So that would mean having varying hitboxes on the ship between the sail and the mast and the front and the back of the boat as examples, having things like sea currents that you can take your ship on to get faster ship speeds when you're sailing. There's a lot of different things that we can do, but we certainly agree that there's a lot of room for growth when it comes to naval combat, not only in the content out in the sea itself, but in how actual naval combat functions as it stands. That being said, it's still one of my favorite things about Darkfall. I've always loved ship battles, and I think it's one of the areas that if we do expand upon and get a lot more people out in the waters, it will make the game just in general a lot more fun.
Yeah, ship combat definitely needs some love. And we have some ideas for that. We just didn't have time, honestly. But I feel like it'll be something we hit relatively soon after launch.
Let me go back and see if I'm missing any other ones here.
I have no idea what this thing is, by the way, I'm looking at. It's called a Goblin Juvenile. And it's totally broken. It looks like it's all wrapped up and none of its animations work.
So DF Incarnation asks, what are you going to do to make the game more streaming, like an arena, very long dungeon tasks, puzzles, etc.? Well, I think there's a couple things here. First of all, when it comes to things like an arena, it's something we've talked about, and not necessarily an instanced arena that you go in like what a game like World of Warcraft did with Battlegrounds, but more of like a coliseum that you can go to have arranged fights where people can be spectators. That would certainly be something where you could host tournaments in game that are player made, which would make it something a lot of fun to stream. In regards to long dungeons or things like that, that would require implementing new dungeons as well as enhancing the current dungeons that we have. That's obviously something that we want to do, but it goes back to the topic of finding the time and the resources to prioritize that. Right now, enhancing on the dungeon experience isn't necessarily a priority because there's a lot of them in the game at the moment, and if we make them, the monsters worth farming, we can drive a lot of activity down there anyway. But having things like you mentioned races, I'm assuming you mean like horse races or races on foot. If we provide you guys with the tools to be able to do that yourself, then obviously it gives you something else that you can possibly stream.
Flags, man. Player use flags right now.
Well, yeah, we have player use flags to
start and finish line. Go.
Yeah, but I'm saying there's obviously ways that we can expand upon that too, to make it so that we can have more official races and things along that nature.
For sure. I think one of the visions I had was when a few times when we talked about having an arena was taking the placeable objects and allowing people to go in and arrange it how they want and set it up for different. That way, it's not the same thing every time. You could set up different obstacles and whatnot and have your freaking games. But that's just a discussion. We don't know for sure if that's going to happen. We discuss a lot of different things. Some things are silly and
Yeah. I would love to see just like an organic world type arena type of thing that would kind of appeal to that sort of player. I think it could be really cool.
So E. Thompson asks advertising where and what it has been done. We've been doing some external advertising, through things such as SEO optimization as well as ads through third parties. Our target has been primarily the MMORPG community, sandbox players, people who are playing survival games, as another example. But we've also done a lot of marketing internally within our team when it comes to expanding on our user base of potential players, expanding our reach and exposure of our website out there on the market, reaching out to some streamers that would have interest in streaming Darkfall, doing interviews with gaming websites, having potential videos being made by people who are well known in the YouTube community. There's a lot of things that we can do, and there's a lot of things that also we're restricted in doing due to the fact that it costs a lot of money. So, marketing is something that doesn't start and end at launch. It leads up to launch and continues afterwards. So it'll be something that we'll always be working on. But one of the big things that we're hoping to get from you guys in our community is that, simply spreading the word yourself on the forums that you visit and the gaming websites that you go to, letting your friends know that launch is coming up and what to expect. All those things will help us too. Making videos at launch about the game, streaming the game at launch. There's a lot of things that we can do on our end, and there's also a lot of things that you guys can do in the community to help us out. And so stay tuned for a future update on that here in the next couple of weeks leading up to launch. And yeah, I hope that answers your question.
About getting a house deed out of a chaos chest. Can't get any easier than that. No, I think Des has some ideas for removing the RNG, but I don't really know.
We've actually, I'm not sure if we're going to do it or not, but we've talked about removing all house deeds and then launching without housing and then have the new way of getting house deeds in the first patch or so. But not sure we're going to do that.
Yeah, and the idea behind that is if we don't have the new mechanic in for houses in right away and people get them randomly, and then next thing you know, people have to go and craft all this stuff to get them, it's probably better just to hold them off. And so that's where that discussion.
Can anyone confirm if this kangaroo was ever in the game? I feel like I've never seen it.
I can't see what you're looking at, but I know they have kangaroos on Ruby.
Huh. It looks well made. I don't know. It's weird.
Steam? No, I don't think Steam is a option right now.
Steam is going to be something we look into after launch, probably 6 months down the line, depending on where we are. So getting it greenlit on Steam, that's definitely a possibility, but it's not a concern for us at launch. We can always get the game up onto Steam, X amount of months after we officially go live. So definitely on the table, definitely something I want to have done, getting us greenlit and up there, but I'd rather wait until a couple months after launch before we go that route. Screw Loose asks, why are we launching in May? Well, we had a bunch of meetings as a team as to when would be a good date to launch and what kind of tasks would be required for us to be launch ready. And that's when we came up with the May 5th launch date. The reality is that the game was in development the original Darkfall was in development from early 2001 and launched in 2009, and did have some patches throughout its lifespan leading up to its closure in 2012. And since we've gotten the game, we've enhanced a lot of the areas that were lacking in Darkfall Online, and made changes to some key foundational areas that we felt were necessary in order to provide a better experience for new players. So for us, it's just a matter of when do we want to actually have what you guys do and test mean something, and allow you guys to start building up banks and creating empires. And for us, the date of May 5th made sense because it allowed us to give us time to finish our Wilderness Portal network, our economy revamp, and some of the other tasks that we wanted to get implemented before launch, and give us more of a strong starting point to work with when we get in our first rush of players with the game world, as almost like a base to build off of from there. And again, I said it in the beginning of the stream, and I'll say it again: launch to us is not the end of development. It's more of the beginning of the fun part of development, where we can move away from a lot of the almost annoying changes we've had to do from a development standpoint, because they haven't been necessarily fun. Things like changing the skill system, changing a lot of the things with the hotbar functionality, etc. Once we can get away from those aspects of the game and focus on more sandbox content and things that we as gamers would want ourselves, that's really what kind of launch is referencing. And as the starting point is when we can shift gears and start focusing on adding in that new content that you guys have all been asking for, and that we as previous Darkfall players always wanted ourselves. Asimur says, any plans to change the way you dismount? It is sticky and always feels so weird getting off.
Sticky?
Wow.
Wow.
That whole sentence was just awesome.
Do you guys have any comments?
Sticky? I thought it would got easier, didn't it?
It's getting easier all the time. The only problem with it right at the moment, it's getting easier to get off all the time. No, the only problem with it right now is when you're on a steep incline, and it has to do with the way that I changed it so that you could get off while so you could dismount while moving, and now because of what I did, the incline is an issue, so I'll have to go in and tweak some stuff, but we'll see how that goes. It should work come launch. I just haven't had a chance to get into it just yet. But I don't understand the whole being difficult to dismount. It seems pretty easy to me, I guess.
All right, guys. So we're at 4:10 right now. I figure before we close this off, maybe we could ask you guys a couple questions, those of you that are on the stream. So the first one I want to ask you guys is, if you had to list one change that we've done since we opened up the servers in alpha that you've really enjoyed, what would be your favorite change that we've implemented so far?
Were you asking us a question?
No, I was asking them.
Oh, okay.
Scribing system, quick looting, race wars removed, built-in macro system.
Definitely dirt.
I see there's a lot of hotbar changes. There's a lot of changes, or a lot of mention of the scroll system, user interface. Those are areas that we're going to always be enhancing too. I mean, the user interface we're not done with it by any means.
Somebody banned Saronis real quick. Fucking traitor. I'm just kidding. I probably shouldn't cuss, huh?
You're okay.
We lost our mod, I think.
Oh, good. We're in the clear.
All right, so I got another one for you then. If you had one mechanic or piece of content that we could implement that, off of your wish list, one thing that if we were to shift gears and focus on as an example, what would that be? What would be your number one wish list item? Flying mounts. I actually, something that we talked about the other
Poker.
day.
That's what I'm all about.
I want hang gliders.
The only good feature of Archage.
Yeah.
Plantable seeds and farming is definitely something we're looking into. Poker and
Got some
tabletop
ideas
games.
for that as well.
Oh, I bet you do.
I got
Fixing
ideas
the
for
siege
everything,
system.
man. It says if there's anything that happens when I'm going through and working on any task, I think what delays me the most is thinking, oh, look at that. Oh shit, I know how to do this now. Oh my god, I know what new ideas popping up all over the place.
I know.
It's like,
It's ridiculous.
TJ will message me, at like 1 o'clock in the morning, be like, "Hey, look what I just found," and it'll be something in the code that we didn't know of, or some bug that we were trying to address that he finds by just searching through something and working on something else. So it's definitely exciting on our end as developers to be able to look at the kinds of things that we'll be able to do, which is why for us launch is so exciting because. Again, it's really that starting point where we can shift gears and focus on all that fun new content that you guys are always asking for on the forums. So I think if you guys don't have any other questions, well, let's see here. There's one from Sindru. I'll ask this to you guys, Brad and TJ. What is the coolest thing you found in the code that would be interesting to old school players?
The coolest thing I've found in the code. It's a tough question, honestly. I mean, any sort of context, just the coolest thing. I don't know. I mean, it's code.
that would be interesting to old school players. I don't.
I mean, I guess which we fixed now, but I don't know how many people are intricately familiar with how the housing system worked when the taxes went live after someone didn't pay. But there was always this weird thing with it being an extra hour, and very few people actually understood that it actually, like from the time it said it was actually an extra hour, and to actually go in the code and see the error in the math and fix it was pretty cool. And that was just one little small thing, though.
I think if I can't pinpoint any individual thing, but I think what I find interesting and would probably hopefully interest some of you is that there were so many things that we asked for and wanted in the original iteration, and we're constantly told that it couldn't be done. And after looking through it and thinking, why not? So I mean, then that is pretty fascinating to me, as both as an old player and coming into it, because I realized that it's not true at all.
No, I mean, some things are hard to do just because of the nature of the code and the architecture of Darkfall, because it's older and stuff. But a lot of things aren't as hard as they were made out to be. That's for sure. And
that's something that might interesting about the four-legged run. It never existed.
No, it never existed. There's no remnants. Trust me, the code there is a graveyard. There's old remains of old code all over the place. So if there was ever a four-legged run being implemented, we probably would have seen it by now. Someone would have stumbled across it.
Remember, it's already working and in testing. We're just checking it out.
And that's really, on my end, what makes this whole project exciting to be sitting where I am and working with the team that I'm working with is because not only are we all, for the most part, old Darkfall Online players, but we also are old school MMO players. Brad, as an example, loves Ashwin's Call and played it a lot more than I did because I was more of an Ultima Online guy myself, like TJ was. But the reality is that
Actually, I was more Star Wars Galaxies.
well, there you go, Star Wars
You see.
Galaxies, and Thomas, I think, was more
Yeah.
the Ultima Online guy. But there's so many cool things that we've thought of that the game actually allows us the ability to implement and do. It's just a matter of prioritizing certain things and getting implemented. And at launch, if we're able to bring in a healthy population and give us some consistent monthly revenue, we're going to expand on the development team as well, which means that we'll be able to implement things, more quickly than we currently can because of our, at the moment, limited resources. So the sky's really the limit as to what kind of mechanics and content we can implement. It's all about finding the right resources and time to actually get it, into the game.
Halo.
Yeah, I mean, this game, we could do anything really, as far as development goes. It just all boils down to, it's just resources, time. And AV was pretty good at making it seem like they didn't have any resources, and I guess maybe they didn't because, after a point, they really didn't change much.
Yeah, I find it. We like to knock on them, but we really don't know their situation. So I don't want to say too much against them because you never know why things were the way they were.
And hey, despite everything that ever happened, the game engine itself and the game world was created by the original people at Razorwax and Adventuring. So, we have the foundation that we have because of what they put together, and it gives us a good starting point, to be able to constantly add to the game.
Yeah, I mean, what they did was pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie, it's quite a feat, absolutely.
So we'll wait around for a few more minutes and take a couple more questions if you guys have them, and then we'll cut the stream and save the video for anybody who wants to watch it at a later date or catch up on things that they might have missed. I hope you guys have been having fun with this stream. It's the first time that we're officially doing something like this, but we definitely want to make it more of a habit once we get, past this launch date and get the live server going and everything. So if you guys think that you had fun and got some value from it, we'll certainly do new ones or even other events as well. Grumbags asks, what do you guys want to be the average day-to-day armor set? Plate, full plate? I think the proper balance would be right around plate, maybe a little bit of full plate. The top end of the non-mastery gear and the very bottom end of the mastery gear. Anything higher than that needs to have actual value, which means that it needs to be sought after, require a good amount of resources to make, and be something that people when they wield it and they go out to go fight somebody, there's actually risk involved in wearing it.
Ha! Best event ever. Thank you. That was a great event. I loved it. It was a lot of fun.
Well, it's good to see that you guys enjoyed yourself. We definitely will do more of these. I mean, it's those of us on the team definitely enjoy being able to interact more closely with you guys on like a live basis. So
We touched on that a little bit earlier, Payne. When we get the chance, we would like to complete the sets, so it would be a goal. I think new stuff is probably a bigger priority, but yeah, no time frame though. I mean, it's once we get past launch, we can start narrowing things down a little better.
Yeah, definitely.
Incarnation asks, how high is player customization like dyes and clan flags, name tags, and weapons on the priority list? It's definitely something that we want to do relatively shortly after launch, at least in regards to things like dyes. Clan flags and tabards might take a little bit longer, but if we can get dyes in so that players can customize their armor in a shorter time frame after launch, like within the first couple patch cycles, I think that it would be a very good thing, because not only can we add some dyes for you guys out on the cash shop for you to use your Ithron coins on, but also provide ways to get them in game too for just a new item or a new set of items to go out and farm for.
Was my question about chest loot answered? What was your question?
I think hasn't been revamped, right?
Oh, has it been revamped? It will be revamped, yes. It's probably already done. Just haven't actually put it in the game yet.
Yeah, well, as far as bets go, that was actually one of the things that came up when talking about the potential for an arena. Was players being able to place bets on them.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I mean, my vision is like an arena, in the open world that has the mechanic of being able to accept bets, perhaps even globally. I don't know, but it would be pretty cool. It would be a neat thing to have, and just if you enjoyed betting, you could literally just bet. Obviously, there would have to be bookies as well, though.
Bojangles, we touched base on this before, but our goal is to completely redesign and revamp the in-game journal, because as you can, as you alluded to in your comment, it's a piece of crap right now. It takes forever to load, and it doesn't give us a lot of customization as well. So
We've had several people take a stab at that thing, and every time it's been the same after a few days or whenever.
Yeah, so when it comes to when we first, yeah, he's talking about just going in and trying to upgrade the browser. Man, I think I think the conclusion is we're just going to make in-game user interfaces for those sections and get rid of the browser entirely. So it's just time. We'll get there. Possibly the new task book. You've seen that. We could put some tabs on that and turn it into just the journal for everything. There are lots of options that we could do, but no, we won't. Neil says he hasn't given up, but
he should.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it'd be nice if we could get a newer browser in the game, even if just so we could possibly leverage that for like mini games in game and stuff like that. But I don't. It probably wouldn't be a good solution, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, even modern engines using browsers in game, it's still a little glitchy. It works, but probably better off just using in-game user interface stuff.
what was your question, Sindru, on the boat glitches?
Yes to the pointy nipples on Agon.
As far as making the world feel more alive, Sick, I know I've seen you ask that a bunch of times. I guess it must be habit to ignore you. I'm kidding. No, we talked about throwing some NPCs and stuff walking around cities and things like that, and we may look into it at some point. It wasn't really high priority, is all. But it is kind of dead. Maybe we can just make it feel more alive with other things like I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough thing. It's somewhat, there are some limitations of the engine itself. When you say feel more alive, what does that really mean?
I mean, I imagine when people ask for that, because he's not the only one who asked for it, is people going, is NPCs walking around and doing things, and and that's a lot of time.
It's a lot of time for
just messing with you, Sick.
Yeah, it's a lot of time for something that's mostly just for show. I mean, it'd be nice, obviously, to do all that kind of stuff, like pathing on NPC and stuff. But someone has to go in there and path every single NPC in the world.
Either that, or they end up like the wildlife, just wandering aimlessly.
Yeah.
Sindru asked if we're going to fix people getting stuck on boats or holding onto the back glitch. Obviously, we'll work to address those particular issues. I mean, if we're going to do a revamp of naval combat itself, which is the plan anyway, it'll probably get tied into that. But I believe they're currently listed on our bug list anyway in Jira. Our quality assurance guys could confirm that, but I'm pretty sure it's been brought up in the past and is notated down somewhere.
Yeah, I believe we had something for that, and then it had like unforeseen side effects, and we had to back out of it for now. But we had done something that was kind of like it was like repel you when you hit the boat. But like I said, it was actually for fun hulks, but it actually carried over to boats.
Welcome, Mad Cow. Yeah, they, as I said, we're going to be closing this down here in the next couple minutes.
Mad Cow is so late.
Deathlock gets all the blame for my shenanigans.
Train of Pain is asking, will players be able to spawn in any city at player creation?
We talked about it.
So yeah, we wanted to be able to do that, but there's a lot of things that would need to, and eventually we will. There's a lot of things that go into that. One, you can't accept quests if you're not the same race right now. So we would have to go in and fix that. You can't. We would have to change the user interface for the character creations to allow you to pick those places. And then there's the bindstone restrictions that we currently have in place. And I don't think you can bind in a starter city if you're the opposite race. So when you look at all those changes and being able to do that, it was just too much to get in before launch.
And keep in mind, with the changes to the alignment system, even if you spawn in an area that's not populated or away from your friends, you can travel to whatever NPC area that you want and still have access to it.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a lot of work at this point for, one inconvenience, really, is what it boils down to,
However,
However,
with enough donations, Dest might put some really good wilderness portals near them capitals.
It's true. I should auction off some. That'd be nice.
There you go.
I could put him. Obviously, could put him in all capital cities. I don't know how that would affect the game, though. To be honest, that might be a little too accessible.
A little too easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Seek, TJ or Killring is also on the stream. He's just not
I'm
not a
lurking in the
video.
shadows.
Yeah, He's not on video right now.
Marked runes on the cash shop. Isn't that considered pay to win?
Yeah, I think so.
Brad,
I think just runes in general in the cash shop is pay to win.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been asked to make sure that you have it set to save this video, because I guess.
Well, it's a little late for that, but it is set to save. Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure, because then I'll get a lot of crap if it doesn't get recorded.
Oh God, capturing and jailing other players.
We'll have to do this
talk
again
about
tomorrow.
grief. Now, by putting your head on a spike and you can display it to people, that's about as close to jailing and such as we're gonna get with that, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna get the hog tying in for launch.
Our wilderness portal is going to require reagents to use. No,
Negative.
they're not going to require anything to start off with.
I mean, they could require anything, but for now they're not. If I insert a portal, if you're looking at the stream, and when you select the portal itself, and then you go to the object properties, you can put needs a key, and then you can choose a resource, and that resource can be anything. So you could literally require anything.
We may use portal shards for something else. I don't know if that's already been decided or not.
Yeah, I mean, they're used for capital recall, so it's still something.
Portal shards are? I thought it was just gold.
Oh, no, it is just gold, isn't it? Yeah, we could adjust that. Well, they'll have a use. If they don't, we'll nuke them. I mean,
Are we removing portal shards? It's being asked.
That's what we were just talking about. We don't know. We'll either find a use for them or we'll get rid of them. Maybe we can do like you guys talked about and craft the portal. What are those things? The exits and entrances? Nexuses?
yeah, we could do that. Portal shards, probably 2 available for that right now, but yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yes, Grunbag.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
The Founder's Blade is going to be in at launch, yes. Unless Brad tells me otherwise.
Yeah. No, it should be. It's one of those hanging tasks. Just like the sword's made. You know, I've already played with it in game. It's just about hooking it into the mechanic of it actually being a starter weapon and it actually only appearing on people who bought it, basically, or not bought it, but who bought the packages that it was a reward for.
Oh, they bought it.
Yeah, okay, they bought it.
That's the only reason they bought those packages for that sword.
Ooh, boy, I hate to disappoint them.
Oh, wow.
All right, guys. Well, it looks like the questions have basically tapered off, and it looks like we're starting to lose a few viewers here as well. Hitting up on the 2.5 hour mark, it looks like. So I do appreciate all you guys all of you guys in the community for joining us for this first live Twitch Q&A. I had a lot of fun. I know that Brad and TJ, I'm sure, had a lot of fun as well, and we'll do more of these in the future. I don't think we're going to have time to do another one before launch, given how many different things we have to get accomplished from now until then. But we will certainly do these once the server goes live and have other events on our Twitch account to be able to interact with you guys. So yeah, if you guys have any questions or comments or any feedback that you want to send, feel free to send me a message on the forums. My username is MWTaylor. That I put in the chat channel, so you can always send me a private message if you want. If you have anything that you want to chat about, And yeah, we really appreciate your time here today, guys, and all the support that you've given us during early development. And we hope to see you guys all on May 5th. I don't know if you guys want to have any closing comments here, Brad or TJ.
Closing comments.
No, other than yeah, I enjoyed this. This was pretty cool. Look forward to another one.
Maybe we can get a third camera in here next time, TJ. It was just short notice.
Yeah.
Although your internet, I don't know.
That's cool. And just to say that, just working on this game has been a hell of a lot of fun, and it's going to be fun for hopefully a really long time. So I look forward to all you guys enjoying what we put in, and always welcome your feedback, even if it's not so good. It just makes us better. So keep it up, and thanks.
Yeah, I share the same sentiments. It has been a ton of fun, a ton of learning. Like, you guys don't even understand how much learning is involved with creating, actually, literally just bringing back Darkfall. It's crazy, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, and, we wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, thanks, guys. We'll see you all at launch. Make sure to tell your friends and people you used to play with, and we'll have a good time on May 5th and into the future. You guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, all right?
All right, ending the stream.